The view from the rooftop glittered like something out of a magazine. Glass towers, string lights, champagne glasses catching reflections of the city skyline. It should have been perfect. Our 10th anniversary dinner. Logan had gone all out, renting half the terrace at Ember, the kind of restaurant you had to book months in advance. His firm's partners were there, clients too, all dressed to impress. I wore a sleek emerald dress I hadn't felt confident enough to wear in years. For a second, walking in beside him, I felt proud, like I'd made it here too. But by dessert, that illusion was dead. Logan stood, tapping his glass with a silver fork. "A toast," he said, smiling at me with that polished charm everyone loved. "To 10 years with the woman who somehow tolerated me this long." Laughter rippled around the table. I smiled politely. Harmless banter, right? Then he kept going. "I still remember when Sabrina told me she wanted to start her own design company," he said, gesturing dramatically like he was presenting a TED Talk. "She had this grand vision, eco-friendly furniture, reclaimed wood, all that Pinterest stuff." I said, "Sweetheart, leave the business to me. The world's not ready for recycled coffee tables." The table erupted in laughter. Someone even clapped. My chest tightened. I could feel the blood rushing to my ears. I tried to laugh it off, but my lips wouldn't move. "Come on, babe," he grinned, turning toward me. "You know I'm kidding." But then she laughed. Renee, seated right beside him, hair perfectly waved, hand grazing the stem of her glass like she owned the air he breathed. "Oh, Logan," she purred, "you're terrible." Terrible. That word. I'd heard it before, the same tone, the same giggle, in a voicemail once. Back then, he said it was his assistant calling about invoices. I felt something inside me freeze solid. My best friend Tessa had warned me not to trust Renee, said she'd seen them too close at a networking event. I'd brushed it off, told her Logan was just friendly. That was my first mistake. Confusing charm for loyalty. Now, watching them share that private laugh, it hit me. This wasn't a rumor, it was a performance. The laughter around me began to distort, turning into static. Even the waiter, hovering nearby with a wine bottle, avoided my eyes. "Anyway," Logan continued, voice booming through the hum of the terrace, "she's got a big heart, my Sabrina. She keeps me grounded, even if her business ideas belong in an Etsy shop, not a boardroom." That was it. The final crack. I stood up. My chair scraped against the concrete loud enough to slice through the laughter. "You done?" I asked quietly. The table went silent. Logan blinked, surprised. "Hey, don't be like that, babe. I was just..." "Just what?" My voice shook, but not from weakness. "Embarrassing me? Using me as entertainment for your clients?" He lifted his hands like he was the victim. "It's a joke. Everyone's laughing." "Not everyone," I said. "Just the ones who think it's funny watching a man belittle the woman who built his foundation." His smile faded. "Sabrina, sit down. You're making a scene. That's the only thing I've ever made around you that got your attention." A low gasp moved through the table. Renee's eyes darted to her phone. The other wives looked down, pretending to sip their drinks. I reached for my glass of wine, the one I'd been swirling nervously for the last 10 minutes, and emptied it across his pristine white shirt. The red spread slowly, like a blooming wound. "Now I'm done," I said. The air cracked open, chairs scraped back. Someone muttered, "Jesus Christ." Logan's face twisted between shock and fury. "What the hell is wrong with you?" "What's wrong with me?" I laughed bitterly. "Nothing a clean conscience and a good lawyer can't fix." I grabbed my purse. My legs shook, but I didn't stumble. I walked right past him, past Renee's frozen smile, past the pitying eyes of people who'd never lift a finger for me. The cool night air hit my face like a slap. For the first time in months, I felt awake. Behind me, I heard Logan calling my name. The sound barely registered. I kept walking, down the marble stairs, through the lobby, past the valet stand. My hands trembled as I fished for my car keys. The valet jogged over, wide-eyed. "Ma'am, Are you okay? Not yet, I said. But I will be. He handed me the keys silently. I drove off into the city, heart pounding like a drum. My reflection in the rearview mirror looked foreign, eyes red, lipstick smudged, but alive. At a red light, I pulled over, breathing hard. That's when my phone buzzed, a message from an unknown number. Guess he's finally your problem now. Attached was a photo, Logan and Renee, taken weeks ago, in what looked like his office. His arms around her, mouth pressed to her neck. I let out a short, broken laugh. The universe had impeccable timing. I scrolled through my camera roll, looking at old photos. Our wedding, our first house, Maya's first birthday. Each one felt like a memory of a stranger's life. Then I deleted them all, one by one. As the light turned green, I whispered to myself, "You wanted a story, Logan. Here's your opening act." And for the first time in years, I wasn't afraid of what came next. I wasn't the joke. I was the setup to something far bigger. When I got home, I packed a single overnight bag. Maya was at my sister's for the weekend. The house was silent, too clean, too curated, too fake. I stood in the middle of the living room, looking at the framed photo of us smiling on the mantel. I took it down, flipped it face first, and left it there. I grabbed a notebook from the counter, the one I used to jot down business ideas. On the first blank page, I wrote 3 words in bold ink. It starts tonight. Then I underlined it twice. Because revenge, I realized, doesn't begin with rage. It begins with clarity. And for the first time in a decade, I could see everything clearly. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in my car outside my sister's apartment, watching the sky change from black to gray. Every minute felt like a rerun of memories I didn't want to see. The nights I stayed up waiting for him, the mornings he left early, for meetings, the weekends he worked through anniversaries. I used to tell myself it was temporary, that once Logan's firm stabilized, we'd travel, rest, maybe even start my business together. I built my hope around a someday that never came. When we first met, I was 24, ambitious, creative, building a career in digital marketing. Logan had a spark I admired. Confident, witty, full of vision. He made me feel seen. He said I had a mind made for strategy. And back then, I believed we were equals. When we got married, I quit my agency job to help him with his firm's branding. I redesigned their website, handled their social media, created campaigns that brought in clients. I didn't get a salary. I got promises. "You're building this with me," he'd say. "Once it takes off, it's ours." So, I poured myself into it. His image, his network, his success. When Maya was born, I stepped back, and he kept stepping forward. My world shrank into a cycle of caretaking and waiting. He started calling me his home base, like I was a pit stop instead of a partner. The red flags were there. I saw the way he looked at Renee, how meetings suddenly became strategy dinners, how his phone never left his hand. I asked once, quietly, scared of the answer. He smiled, kissed my forehead, and said, "You've been watching too many shows." I laughed it off because the truth was too heavy to hold. Then came the inheritance. My mother passed 3 years ago and left me her small house in Tucson. Logan convinced me to sell it, said we needed the capital to expand his office. I trusted him. That money became glass walls, new desks, a corner suite with his name on it, Logan Hart, architect. Not Logan and Sabrina, just him. That was the shift. He started treating me like part of the furniture, familiar, functional, invisible. At parties, I'd stand beside him smiling while he introduced me as the reason I'm sane, like a punchline, not a person. I told myself it was stress. I told myself he'd come back around. Then, 2 weeks before the anniversary dinner, Maya said something that ripped the air out of my lungs. We were baking cookies, flour everywhere, her little hands covered in dough. Out of nowhere, she said, "Mom, Daddy's helper was here again. She brought cupcakes." "Renee?" I asked, trying to sound calm. She nodded, focused on the sprinkles. They were laughing a lot. He said I couldn't tell you because it was a surprise. I froze. Every instinct in me screamed denial, but my gut, the part I'd silenced for years, told me the truth. It was real. That's when I realized the betrayal wasn't just about cheating. It was about erasure. I had disappeared inside his success story, and he didn't even notice. When the sun finally rose that morning, I opened my laptop and pulled up the old folder I'd kept. Designs, sketches, brand ideas I'd never shown anyone. Renewed, it said in the header. The name felt prophetic now. That was the moment I stopped mourning the life I lost and started calculating what I was about to rebuild, piece by piece, until every trace of him was gone. The next morning, I woke up with a kind of stillness I hadn't felt in years. Not peace exactly, more like precision. The kind that comes when pain hardens into purpose. My hands didn't shake anymore. I made coffee, sat at the kitchen counter, and opened my laptop. For the first time in a decade, my mind felt sharp, clean, awake. I started with the numbers. Bank accounts, credit cards, investments. Every cent we had. I'd always managed our household finances, so I knew where the soft spots were. Logan kept a joint account for show but funneled most of his earnings into his firm's corporate one. He thought that made him untouchable. He forgot that I set up the system. 10 minutes later, I transferred everything that was legally mine into a separate account. I called the bank to freeze our joint credit cards due to suspicious activity. The irony made me smile. Then I called Nora, my cousin and a corporate lawyer. She didn't ask questions, just said, "Finally," and gave me a list of what to gather. Tax documents, contracts, proof of contributions, the company registration. She told me to move fast and quiet. "Once he realizes you're pulling away," she said, "he'll play victim first and vindictive second." I hung up and exhaled slowly. The fear was still there, but it was shrinking. In its place, something stronger was forming. Focus. By noon, I was packing essentials. Not the sentimental stuff, just what mattered. Clothes, laptop, Maya's favorite blanket, the photo of her at age 3 holding a sunflower bigger than her head. Everything else could rot in that house. I drove to my sister's apartment, unloaded the bags, and sat at her dining table surrounded by noise. Maya's laughter, cartoons, the sound of something frying on the stove. Life. Real life. I hadn't realized how dead my house had felt until now. After lunch, I opened my laptop again. Renewed. The logo draft stared back at me. A looping infinity symbol drawn from broken lines. I'd designed it years ago but never used it. It was time. I spent the rest of the day mapping everything out like a war plan. Domain registration, supplier lists, brand mood boards, pitch emails. My years of helping Logan build his empire became the very weapon I would use to dismantle his illusion. Every spreadsheet, every connection, every strategy I'd built for him, now mine. When the first logo render loaded, I whispered, "There you are." By evening, I had the foundation of my new life, an official business registration pending, 3 potential suppliers, a new bank account, and a private workspace subscription downtown. I wasn't waiting for permission anymore. That's when my phone buzzed. Logan. I ignored the first call, then the second. By the 5th, I picked up. "Where are you?" His voice was clipped, strained. "Somewhere peaceful," I said. "You froze our cards. The bank called. What the hell are you doing?" "Taking back what's mine." "You're being dramatic. We need to talk." "Now you want to talk?" I laughed softly. Funny how that works. "Sabrina, don't start this. You embarrassed me last night. Renee?" "Don't say her name," I snapped. "Not to me." Silence. Then his tone shifted, that manipulative calm he used when he wanted control. "You're upset. I get it. But freezing our accounts? Come on, this is childish." I took a deep breath. "You spent years turning me into a prop in your success story. You mocked me in public. You betrayed me in private. If this feels childish to you, Maybe that's because I'm finally done playing adult in your world. He inhaled sharply. Don't do anything stupid. Oh, I won't, I said. I'm doing something strategic. I ended the call. Then I blocked his number. That night, I couldn't sleep. Not from pain this time, but from momentum. My mind buzzed with ideas. Sustainable fabrics, collaborations, storytelling campaigns. I drafted the brand's manifesto in one sitting. Built from what was broken. Designed to outlast the hands that dropped it. At dawn, I watched the sunlight hit the wall opposite my desk. I realized something simple yet profound. I wasn't rebuilding to prove him wrong. I was rebuilding to remember who I was before him. I opened a new document, titled it Phase 1, and wrote my first objective. Launch soft collection within 30 days. Announce silently, succeed loudly. The war had begun, but not the kind that destroyed, the kind that clarified. And this time, I wasn't the wife standing beside the man with the mic. I was the story. By the third morning, Logan realized something had shifted, not just in his accounts but in the air around him. I could feel it from the silence. No calls, no texts, no angry voicemails. Just absence. The kind that follows a man too used to control. I spent those days working from my sister's spare room, transforming chaos into order. Renewed was starting to take shape. I'd found a manufacturer in São Paulo specializing in recycled fabrics, hired a freelancer to build my website, and started sharing teaser photos anonymously through design forums. I didn't use my name. Not yet. I wanted the work to speak first. Then the storm started brewing. Tessa texted me a link one night. You need to see this. It was a gossip blog, the kind that covered city entrepreneurs and their glamorous implosions. The headline read, Architectural golden boy Logan Hart spotted getting cozy with his firm's director. The photo showed him and Renee leaving a restaurant, laughing, her hand inside his jacket. The caption was brutal. His wife was notably absent. My first reaction wasn't anger, it was clarity. He'd made our marriage public entertainment. Now his downfall would get the same spotlight. 2 days later, Logan called from a new number. I let it ring twice before answering. Are you happy now? He said, voice low and venomous. You think freezing accounts and hiding out makes you look strong? People are talking. They talked when you humiliated me, I said calmly. The only difference is now, they're talking about you. He scoffed. You're bitter. No, I said. I'm busy. He hung up, but I could almost hear the sound of him unraveling on the other end. The ripples spread quickly. His firm's biggest investor, a real estate developer named Patel, withdrew funding after the scandal hit local news. Family image was part of their brand pitch, and apparently, mistresses didn't photograph well for brochures. Within 48 hours, the firm lost 2 major contracts. I didn't have to lift a finger. Meanwhile, Renewed began to gain quiet traction. A popular sustainable living influencer reposted one of my concept sketches with the caption, Whoever's behind this understands transformation. Orders started trickling in before the website even went live. Every ping of a new message felt like oxygen, proof that something I'd once hidden was now breathing freely. Then came the text from Nora. Preliminary divorce papers ready. He's panicking. His lawyer reached out. Good, I replied. Let him sweat before he signs. By week's end, Logan's perfect image was cracking. Renee had gone dark online, and according to whispers from one of my contacts inside the firm, staff were avoiding him like he was contagious. He'd built his empire on charm, and now that charm was radioactive. Still, I wasn't celebrating. Not yet. Revenge, I realized, wasn't instant gratification. It was a slow rebalancing. You didn't rush it. You let it unfold. Saturday morning, I took Maya to the park. She laughed as she chased pigeons, hair wild, face free. I sat on the bench watching her and felt something unnameable. Peace, maybe. Freedom wrapped in exhaustion. Then, mid-afternoon, my phone buzzed again. This time a message from Renee. You've made your point. Stop feeding rumors. It's cruel. I laughed out loud. Cruel? I whispered to myself. That's rich coming from the woman who baked cupcakes in my kitchen. I didn't reply. Some silences are louder than shouting. That evening, I opened Renewed's website analytics. 2,000 visitors, 70 pre-orders. My heart raced. I screenshotted the dashboard and saved it under the folder Beginnings. And right then, an email arrived. Subject line: Inquiry for collaboration. It was from an eco-luxury brand in Barcelona wanting to feature my collection in their summer campaign. I stared at the screen, smiling through tears. This wasn't revenge anymore. It was resurrection. But as quickly as the high came, reality followed. Logan wasn't done. He never lost quietly. 2 days later, my lawyer forwarded me a message from his legal team. A thinly veiled threat disguised as a settlement proposal. He wanted half my new business profits, claiming intellectual property overlap. The audacity almost made me laugh. He's reaching, Nora said. He knows he's bleeding out, and he's trying to claw something on his way down. Then let him, I said. I'm not done building the fire. That night, as I watched Maya sleep, I felt the weight of everything. The collapse, the rebuild, the quiet vengeance hiding behind my calm face. I wasn't sure where this road ended, but I knew one thing. I'd stopped being his shadow. Outside, rain hit the windows in soft rhythm, the kind of storm that cleanses. Somewhere across the city, Logan was probably drinking alone, wondering when he'd lost control. He still didn't realize. The moment he laughed at me that night, he handed it to me. 2 months passed before I saw him again. By then, Renewed wasn't just an idea, it was alive. Orders were rolling in, articles were calling it the voice of modern resilience, and women from all over were writing messages about reclaiming their worth. Every time I packed a shipment, I thought about how his mockery had lit this fire. His laughter had become my fuel. Logan, meanwhile, was trying to crawl back into the spotlight. After losing his biggest clients, he'd started doing damage control, interviews, podcasts, networking events. He framed himself as a man rebuilding after personal mistakes, which sounded noble until you remembered his mistake had a name, a desk, and an office affair attached to it. So when I received an invitation to the City Innovators Charity Gala, the same event we used to attend together, I hesitated for about 3 seconds before replying yes. I wasn't going as his wife anymore. I was going as competition. The night of the gala, I wore a flowing ivory suit from my own collection. Clean, sharp, impossible to ignore. The venue was the same rooftop ballroom where Logan once toasted our future. I stepped through the glass doors and felt every eye turn, not in pity this time, but in curiosity. He saw me instantly. His posture stiffened mid-conversation, glass halfway to his lips. Renee wasn't beside him. Rumor was she'd left the firm after the investor fallout. Apparently, loyalty wasn't her strongest skill. "Sabrina," he said as I approached, using that polished smile that used to melt me. "You look different. Successful?" I offered. He chuckled awkwardly. "No hard feelings, I hope." "Hardly. I made peace with the past. You should try it sometime." Before he could respond, one of the event organizers appeared and interrupted. "Logan, we're starting the speeches soon. You're first up." "Perfect." I found a seat near the front, close enough to watch every flicker of his expression. When the lights dimmed and he took the stage, microphone in hand, the audience quieted. He started strong, talking about innovation, resilience, and integrity. The hypocrisy was almost poetic. Halfway through, he said, "The past months have taught me that leadership is about transparency. We all stumble, but we grow stronger when we own our mistakes." That was my cue. I stood up, calmly, deliberately. Heads turned, cameras shifted. He froze for half a beat before forcing a smile. "Well," I said, voice clear across the room, "if transparency's what we're celebrating tonight, maybe we should all toast to it properly." A ripple of whispers filled the space. Logan cleared his throat. "Sabrina, please." No, really, I continued, stepping closer to the stage. You talk about integrity like you invented it. But integrity isn't a speech, Logan. It's what you show when no one's watching, or when your assistant brings cupcakes to your house on a Sunday. A few gasps broke out. Cameras clicked. I looked around at the audience, my voice steady. Here's the truth. Sometimes the best innovation comes from being underestimated, from being laughed at. But if you're lucky, those laughs become the echo that drives you forward. Then I turned toward him. You remember that dinner, don't you? When you mocked my idea in front of everyone? You said the world wasn't ready for recycled furniture. Turns out, it was ready for recycled strength. Someone in the back started clapping. Then another. Within seconds, the whole room erupted, half in admiration, half in shock. Logan stood frozen under the spotlight, face tight, knuckles white around the mic. I gave him a small, almost kind smile. You can keep your speeches. I'll keep my results. Then I walked out, calm, composed, every camera flash following me like I was the only story worth telling. By morning, that clip was everywhere. A guest had filmed the exchange and posted it online. The caption read, "Wife turns husband's speech into public masterclass on revenge." It went viral. The comments were ruthless. That's how you reclaim your voice. She didn't just get even, she evolved. This is the energy we're taking into 2026. By the end of the week, Renewed had doubled its following. Journalists were calling it a symbol of empowerment born from betrayal. The irony wasn't lost on me. He had built his name through architecture, but I'd learned to rebuild from ruins. Meanwhile, Logan's world shrank. His board pressured him to step down temporarily. His investors pulled remaining funds, citing brand concerns. Even his father, who once worshipped him, publicly supported me after reading an article titled, "From the Ashes, Sabrina Cortez and the Rebirth of Renewal." The night after the gala, I sat on my balcony, scrolling through the headlines. The city lights looked softer than they used to. I wasn't gloating, I was breathing. Maya was asleep inside, her small hand clutching her stuffed bear. For the first time in months, our home felt peaceful. No tension, no silence, no pretending. When my phone buzzed, I didn't even have to look to know it was him. The message was short. "You didn't have to humiliate me like that." I stared at it for a long moment, then typed back, "You're right, I didn't have to. But you taught me how." Then I blocked his number again. Because that night, under the bright lights of that ballroom, I hadn't just won, I'd ended the chapter he thought he controlled. He built a tower on my back. I burned it down and used the ashes as ink, and everyone saw it happen. The morning after the gala felt like walking into sunlight after a long storm. My phone wouldn't stop vibrating. Messages, emails, interview requests. The clip of me calling Logan out had exploded across social media. Every outlet from BuzzNow to Business Sphere was running headlines about the woman who turned humiliation into empire. But Logan didn't disappear quietly. He never did. 3 days later, I woke up to see his face on a morning talk show. He looked polished again. Hair slicked back, designer suit, remorseful half-smile perfected for the cameras. The chyron beneath him read, "Logan Hart speaks out. I'm owning my mistakes." I sat on the couch, coffee in hand, watching him spin fiction into sympathy. "I made personal errors," he said solemnly, "but no one deserves to have their private pain turned into public entertainment. I still respect Sabrina deeply. She's talented, and I wish her nothing but success." I laughed out loud. Respect? The man who'd reduced my dream to a joke was now preaching emotional maturity. I should have been furious, but I wasn't, because I knew how this game worked. He was playing damage control. I was playing long-term legacy. By noon, his PR machine was in full motion. Articles started circulating, framing him as a misunderstood visionary. His firm released a statement about professional restructuring and personal growth. But what he didn't count on was that truth always leaks, especially when you've burned too many bridges. 2 nights later, I got a message from an unknown account on Instagram. The username was Truth from Inside. The message said, "You deserve to know. He's been lying again. Check your email." Attached were forwarded screenshots, internal firm emails, Logan mocking clients behind their backs, joking crudely about women in the office, even bragging about how he'd spin the sob story for press sympathy. There was also one particularly damning line. "Sabrina's little brand will fade once the attention does. She's just a trend." I sat there, staring at the screen, feeling that old heat rise in my chest. Not rage. Something colder. Resolve. I forwarded the emails to Nora. "Are these legal to share publicly?" She replied almost instantly. "They're internal leaks. As long as you didn't steal them, you're in the clear. Just be strategic." Strategic was my favorite word now. The next day, without ever naming him, I launched a renewed campaign titled "Tune from Broken to Built." The centerpiece was a short video montage, images of women creating something powerful out of what others tried to destroy. A potter reshaping shattered clay, a tailor sewing ripped fabric, a woman sanding down reclaimed wood into furniture. The voiceover simply said, "They laughed when we started. They stopped laughing when we finished." Within 24 hours, the hashtag exploded. Women everywhere began sharing their own stories, failed relationships, betrayals, recoveries, tagging Renewed and using the line as their anthem. Then came the knockout punch. One of the firm's interns leaked the rest of the emails to a journalist at Metro Weekly. The story dropped with the headline, "Integrity Architect, Inside Logan Hart's Private Emails." Screenshots of his words, "Spin the sob story," "Trend wife," and "Public meltdown," spread like wildfire. By evening, his talk show apology looked like pure performance. The internet turned. Hashtags like "Bon Heartless" and "Don Renewed Wins" started trending simultaneously. And I didn't say a single word. When reporters called asking for comment, I just replied with, "I'm too busy building." It drove them crazy. Silence, I realized, was louder than any statement. Logan tried one more desperate move, a video apology posted to his company page. He looked tired this time, voice trembling slightly. "I've hurt people I care about. I'm stepping away from my firm to reflect and rebuild." But the comment section didn't forgive. Thousands of replies poured in, memes, screenshots, and one that made me actually laugh. "Reflect in unemployment, King." By week's end, his investors pulled out completely. Renee deleted her social media. And my brand reached 100,000 followers. Orders were backlogged for weeks. The final twist came from Harper's Insight, a major lifestyle magazine that published an article titled, "The Woman Who Beat the Narrative." They called me a modern archetype of grace under fire. I didn't feel graceful. I felt real. But maybe that was the point. That night, as I sat on my balcony again, I watched my city shimmer below me. The war was over, and I hadn't thrown a single public insult. Just truth, wrapped in strategy. The phone buzzed again, not Logan this time, but my brand manager. "We just got invited to speak at the Global Design Summit. They want your story as the keynote." I smiled. "Tell them yes. I've got something to say." Because while Logan was busy rebuilding an image, I was rebuilding a world. One made from every broken piece he left behind. And this time, the whole world was watching. The legal war began quietly. No courtroom drama, no shouting matches, just the cold precision of paperwork slicing through whatever was left of our marriage. Nora called it a clean kill. By now, Logan's firm had imploded. Investors were gone, clients vanished, and his reputation was radioactive. I didn't celebrate. I'd already learned that revenge doesn't need applause, only completion. Still, he tried to fight. His lawyer filed motions claiming joint intellectual property over Renewed, arguing that I'd used resources and connections cultivated during the marriage. It was a last-ditch attempt to tie himself to something still standing. Nora dismantled it effortlessly. She presented bank records showing my inheritance funded the firm's foundation, not the other way around. She had receipts, contracts, and even a witness, one of Logan's former accountants who testified that I never took a paycheck, even when I'd done full marketing campaigns. The judge's expression barely changed before she said, "Motion denied." That single phrase was worth more than any victory speech. From there, everything fell apart for him at lightning speed. The court froze his remaining assets pending division, which revealed more debt than wealth. Turns out, beneath the gloss and ego, his company had been bleeding cash for months. Loans, unpaid invoices, even personal expenses disguised as client hospitality. When Nora told me, I felt a strange mix of satisfaction and sadness. I used to think financial ruin would make me feel powerful. Instead, it just confirmed how hollow his empire had always been. Meanwhile, Renewed was flourishing. Orders had grown beyond what I could manage alone. I hired a small team, women who'd been overlooked in their own industries. They worked like fire, passionate and loyal. I paid them well and told them what Logan never told me. "You're the backbone of this." Then the personal fallout hit. Logan's father, once his biggest supporter, called me out of the blue. His voice trembled with regret. "Sabrina, I raised him to value people, not destroy them," he said quietly. "I'm sorry for what he did. I wish I'd seen it sooner." I didn't know what to say. This was the man who'd once told me to support your husband's dreams. Now he was apologizing for raising the kind of man who crushed them. "You don't owe me an apology," I said. "Just don't excuse him anymore." He sighed. "You have my word." Within weeks, word spread that his family had withdrawn all financial ties from Logan. His brother, who co-owned a small share in the firm, filed to have his name removed entirely. It was like watching a house burn down one room at a time, each floor collapsing into the next until nothing remained. But what broke him wasn't money, it was invisibility. He tried to contact me again, emails, voicemails, even flowers delivered to my office. I ignored every attempt. One voicemail, though, stuck with me. His voice cracked near the end. "I know I ruined it," he said. "I just don't know how to live without being someone." For a brief second, I almost pitied him. Then I remembered how I'd once said those same words, alone in the dark, and he'd laughed. Maya, now 10, was adjusting better than I expected. Kids sense when peace replaces tension. She'd stopped asking why Daddy wasn't home and started asking if she could help me pick fabric colors. One night, while we were folding samples, she looked up and said, "You're happier now, Mommy." I smiled. "I am. Is Daddy okay?" I hesitated. "He's learning," I said. "Some lessons take time." She nodded like she understood something deeper than words. Maybe she did. When the divorce was finalized, Nora handed me the papers like a medal. I skimmed through. Full custody of Maya, half the firm's remaining assets, and exclusive ownership of Renewed. Logan got the debts, the empty office, and his name, the one that no longer meant anything. After the final hearing, I walked out of the courthouse into the crisp morning air. The sky looked cleaner, bluer, wider. For the first time in a long time, there was no weight pressing on my chest. Outside, a journalist called out, "Sabrina, any statement for the press?" I paused, turned slightly, and smiled. "Yes. Build something worth losing everything for." They quoted that line everywhere the next day. That night, as I tucked Maya into bed, she whispered, "Mom, are we done fighting?" I brushed her hair back. "We're done surviving." Later, I sat at my desk, sipping tea, looking at the Renewed logo glowing on my laptop screen. The infinity symbol, broken lines reconnecting, felt truer than ever. Logan had lost everything trying to protect an image. I'd gained everything by letting one die. And somewhere in the city, I imagined him sitting in an empty apartment, staring at a future that used to be his, and finally understanding what it feels like to be erased. It happened on a Thursday. Ordinary, forgettable. I'd just finished a meeting with a major distributor who wanted Renewed featured in a global campaign. My team had gone home for the day, the office filled with that warm, post-work quiet, the kind where success finally feels real. Then the front desk called. "Ms. Cortez, there's someone here asking for you. He says it's urgent." I didn't need a name. The tone said it all. "Send him up," I said. My voice was calm, but my pulse wasn't. The elevator dinged a minute later, and there he was, Logan. Only, not the man I remembered. His hair was overgrown, his suit rumpled, his posture deflated. The confidence he once wore like armor was gone, replaced by something hollow. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. He looked around the office, taking in the glass walls, the sunlight, the hum of success. My success. "You did all this," he said finally, voice quiet. "I didn't think you would." "I know," I replied. "That was your problem." He gave a weak laugh, running a hand through his hair. "You always had that bite. I used to love that about you." I crossed my arms. "You used to love control, not me." His jaw tightened. "I came to talk, please. Just a few minutes." I motioned toward the seating area. 5. He sat on the edge of the couch, elbows on his knees, eyes unfocused. "You destroyed me," he said softly. "Everything I built, gone. My firm, my reputation. I can't even walk into a room without people whispering." I leaned against my desk, arms still folded. "You destroyed yourself. I just stopped cushioning the fall." "I know I hurt you," he continued, eyes flicking up to meet mine. "But I never meant for it to go this far. I was stupid. I thought I could fix it. I thought maybe that I'd save you again." I cut in. "That's what I used to do, remember? Patch up your lies, smooth over your ego, protect your image. You trained me well." His shoulders slumped. "I lost everything, Sabrina. You lost what wasn't real." He looked around again, taking in the design boards on the wall. Sketches, fabric swatches, photos of women from around the world wearing Renewed. His voice softened. "This was your dream, huh? All those nights you'd stay up sketching. I thought it was just a hobby." "That's because you couldn't imagine me existing outside your shadow." He exhaled heavily, the sound jagged and uneven. "I'm sorry," he said finally. "I know that doesn't fix anything, but I am. I wake up every day wishing I'd shut my mouth that night. I've watched the clip 100 times. Every time I see it, I realize I didn't just humiliate you. I destroyed the one person who ever believed in me." I studied him for a long moment. There was sincerity there, maybe even regret. But the thing about regret is that it's selfish. It's about easing guilt, not undoing harm. "Do you know what belief really is, Logan?" I asked. "It's seeing someone's potential and trusting they'll honor it. You had mine, and you weaponized it. You mocked me in front of your peers because somewhere inside, you knew I'd outgrow you. And you couldn't handle that." His eyes glistened. "You're right. I usually am," I said quietly. He laughed once, hollow, defeated. "You sound like me now." "No," I replied. "You sound like me pretending to be you." He flinched at that. I don't know where to go from here." "Start by facing yourself," I said, without blaming everyone else for the reflection. He nodded slowly, then looked at the floor. "I can't find work. Nobody will hire me. I sold the apartment. I'm renting a studio. I feel like I'm disappearing." "You are," I said. "That's what happens when the image fades and the truth stays." He looked up at me then. Really looked. "You're not even angry anymore." "I was," I said, "for a long time. But anger keeps you tied to the thing that broke you. I let it go when I realized forgiveness isn't about mercy. It's about freedom." He swallowed hard. "Do you forgive me?" "I forgive the version of you I loved," I said. "But not the man who killed her faith." For a moment, there was only silence between us. Heavy, final. Then he said, "I miss Maya." That one hit differently. I hadn't expected it, but I also hadn't forgotten the look on our daughter's face the night I told her he wouldn't be living with us anymore. "You can see her," I said. "Under the conditions we agreed to. She's thriving, Logan. Don't drag her into your ghosts. He nodded, voice barely above a whisper. She's lucky to have you. She's lucky to have peace, I corrected. He stood then, slow and hesitant. You're not the same woman. No, I said. You buried her. I built someone else. He looked at me with something almost reverent, or maybe just awe mixed with regret. You really did start the business that ended me. I smiled faintly. No, Logan. You ended you. I just made sure it was public. He laughed quietly, a sound more of disbelief than humor. You always had the last word. And you always underestimated it. He nodded once, accepting it, then reached into his pocket. He pulled out a small envelope and placed it on my desk. It's the last payment I owe. I sold my car. It's not much, but it's yours. I want to close this right. I didn't touch it. You can leave it there. He lingered for a second longer, eyes glancing around the office one last time. You really made it. I was always going to, I said. You just made sure I had a reason to start sooner. He smiled sadly. Goodbye, Sabrina. Goodbye, Logan. He turned and walked toward the elevator. I watched him until the doors closed, the sound echoing like a final punctuation mark. When the silence settled, I exhaled. Not out of relief, but release. The story that once defined me had finally ended. Not with vengeance, but with truth. I looked at the envelope still sitting untouched on the desk. Then I picked it up, walked to the window and tore it in half. Money wasn't closure. Peace was. Outside, the city glowed with the kind of light you only see after rain. Soft, gold, forgiving. I whispered to the glass, almost like a prayer. You laughed at my dream, Logan. But you gave it everything it needed. Fire. Then I turned off the lights, locked my office, and walked into the night. Not as his ex-wife, not as a victim, but as the woman who built her empire from the ashes of his arrogance. The chapter was over. And this time, I was the one writing the ending. A year later, I barely recognized the woman in the mirror. Not because she looked different, but because she finally looked whole. The lines around my eyes came from laughter, not exhaustion. The quiet in my home wasn't loneliness. It was peace. Renewed had become more than a brand. It was a movement. Women from across the world were sharing their own rebirths, building businesses, leaving toxic relationships, rediscovering dreams they'd buried for someone else's comfort. Every story reminded me why I started this. Every package we shipped carried more than fabric. It carried proof that pain could be repurposed. Maya had grown too. She was taller, more confident, her laughter louder. She'd started sketching designs in a small notebook I'd given her, full of wild colors and bold ideas. One evening, she looked up from her drawing and said, "Mom, you turned something ugly into something beautiful." I smiled. That's the secret, baby. That's how we win. Sometimes when the city went quiet, I still thought about Logan. Not with bitterness, but with distance. I heard he'd moved out of state, working freelance projects, keeping to himself. He wasn't a villain in my story anymore, just a lesson written in the margins. I didn't need him to fail for me to feel free. His absence was enough. The day Renewed opened its first flagship store, I stood at the entrance as people walked in. Journalists, customers, young women who'd followed my journey from the beginning. Cameras flashed, reporters shouted questions, but I wasn't nervous. I'd spent years being spoken over. Now I had the mic. I looked out at the crowd and said, "This isn't about revenge, it's about rebirth. We're proof that destruction doesn't end you, it reveals you." The room erupted in applause, but I didn't hear it. I was too busy feeling the weight of everything I'd survived lifting off me like smoke. Later that night, after everyone left, I locked the doors and walked through the aisles alone. The air smelled of wood, fabric, and hope. On one display stood a single plaque engraved with the words, "Built from what was broken." I ran my fingers across the letters, smiling through the quiet. That night, I wrote my final journal entry about him, and about me. He laughed at my dreams, And I believed him. Until I stopped. Until I realized his laughter wasn't truth. It was fear. He feared what I could become once I remembered I didn't need his permission to begin. I closed the journal, placed it on the shelf, and turned off the lights. The city outside glowed softly, like it was exhaling with me. I wasn't rebuilding anymore. I was living, and somewhere deep inside, the woman who once trembled through her husband's speech finally whispered back to her younger self, "You made it."